Many, many years ago, in the 1700s, long before any one of you was born, there lived a kind and compassionate and gentle lady. She was known as Grandma Junie. Grandma Junie had the most wonderful way of telling stories. Every evening, just around supper time, she would call all the children together onto her rickety old porch, and she would tell them stories, fabulous stories, and just catch their minds like this. Sometimes the stories, well, sometimes they were scary. They were so scary that the kids would be afraid to go to sleep at night. Always the stories were full of lessons, but they were so easily told that the children didn't feel they'd been in school, but they learned. Sometimes she would tell stories that were animal stories, you know, where the main character is an animal, like Brer Rabbit or the spider Anansi. The animals on the plantation would even come to listen to her stories. I mean, imagine a squirrel, a chipmunk, a cat, a dog, sitting there listening to her stories. But her favorite animal was her burro, who she named Bunky. Now, you know burro is the word for donkey, so it's Bunky the donkey. He would listen to the stories. Grandma Junie had a way of so exciting the children that they would snuggle up close to her. And she would whisper secrets, their family secrets, in their ears. She would tell them how strong their families were, how wonderful their families were, where their families came from. She would give them something that would make them feel so much better. Now, just before Grandma Junie died, she promised the children that the story porch would always be there for them, no matter what. Grandma Junie kept her promise. And her quilt, and her favorite burro, Bunky the donkey, you remember, became magical as well. The story porch became a very special place. And if you want it, all you have to do, children, is start to say, story porch, story porch, and it will come.
Our friend Ossie Davis is here today to talk about the importance of friendship. I really want you to listen. Who knows? You may make a friend.
In the heat of the day, jumping rope or at play, I hear a call. Running here, running there, something special in the air. I hear a call. Like a kite in the air, a flower to bloom, history unfolds as the story is told at the storyboard.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
So, what would you say we learned from that story?
The importance of friendship.
Oh, you're right. Ricky and Ollie were friends even though the animal said that a rabbit and alligator could never be friends. And because of that friendship, Ollie saved Ricky from the other alligators during the flood, right?
Right.
Haley, why are you looking so sad?
Kids would tease me at school and it hurts my feelings.
Well, I want all of you to listen carefully to the story that Bunky put in my book. I think it will help you all understand that teasing is not a very nice thing. The story I'm going to read to you now is entitled, No Matter What They Say, written by Darla Davenport-Powell. Leave me alone, shouted Billy. as he bit his lip to hold back the tears. Charlie and Rodney had called him Fats again, and he did not like it one bit. Billy had been teased all his life about his weight. He could remember being teased as far back as preschool. He hated being called names like Fatso and Blimp, hurtful names that sent him home crying every day. "That's what you get for eating so much," yelled Charles. He and Rodney began to take off toward the playground. "Yeah, Fats, you should go on a diet," laughed Rodney. Billy wiped his eyes as he slowly made his way to his front door, where he rang a little heart-shaped bell. Ding! Billy ran his arm across his face. He did not want his mom to see him crying, and never his dad. He was a big boy now, and his dad would say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would never hurt me." Except today, they did. They hurt very much, more than any stick or stone could. "Billy, you're home early from the playground. Is everything okay?" asked his mom. Why did she have to ask him if everything was okay? Billy could no longer hide his feelings. He began to cry. "Why are they so mean?" he cried. "Who was mean to my child?" asked his mom as she rocked him in her arms and kissed his forehead. Billy stopped crying for a minute to blurt out, "Rodney and Charles." "Those same boys, huh? Well, I have an idea. And when your father gets home, we'll all talk about how we're going to handle this matter." No, you can't tell Dad." "Mom, you can't. He'll think I'm a baby or something. Please, Mom, don't tell him." "Billy, calm down. Your dad understands, son. Now, I know you think that he may not from the talks that you've had, but believe me, he does." "But why does he say stuff like, 'Toughen up, don't let him see you cry'? They're just words." "We can ask him when he comes home." Now, his mom, being the smart lady that she was, knew the answer to Billy's question. But she also knew that it would make Billy feel much better hearing how his father truly felt from his father. "Why don't you go and wash your face, Billy? Start your homework, and when your father comes home, we'll come up to your room." Billy didn't know if it was a good thing or not for his parents to come up to his room. He had rushed out that morning without making his bed, not to mention the clothes that were under his desk and the paper plates that were around on top and even inside the dresser drawer. Billy couldn't worry about his room now. Besides, his parents knew it was much easier for him to clean his room than to clean the wound around his heart that ached on the inside from all the name calling. He slowly marched upstairs, washed his face, pulled out his homework, and waited for his parents. One more hour, and his father would be home. Billy opened his English book and began to read. He must have read the story about Randy and Johnny at least 100 times before. As he began to fall asleep, Billy started to see the story in his dreams. There once was a boy named Randy who had a best friend named Johnny. For fun, they would wait outside of the school gate after dismissal and tease everyone who walked by. "Hey, Linda, I mean Toothpick, you need some help carrying those books. You look like you're going to break," hollered Randy. Johnny fell out laughing. Linda was the skinniest girl in school, and every time they called her Toothpick, her eyes would glisten wide, then close, then tears, then glisten wide again, which really gave Randy a thrill. He had gotten to her the same way his buddies had gotten to him when they discovered that one of his legs was shorter than the other. From that day on, Randy made it a point to pick at others before they picked on him. But somehow, he'd forgotten how painful it felt to be laughed at and called out of your name for the way you looked or dressed or how you walked. "Hey, Johnny, here comes Funnyhead Richard. Let's get him good," chuckled Charles. Johnny, who almost never said anything bad about anyone but only laughed, looked back at Randy and yelled out his first crack. "Oh, Richard, I mean Egghead. No, Applehead. Your head is so shiny, don't know whether to rub it or step on it." Randy let out a great big yell. He'd gotten Johnny in on the action. Now they would have loads of fun. Way to go, Johnny. Man, you're funnier than me. Richard didn't think so. Tears flowed from his eyes. He couldn't help being bald. It was the medicine he was taking that made all of his hair fall out. Randy slapped Johnny 5. You got him, man. I mean, Johnny, did you see his face? He started crying, Randy boasted. Johnny looked at Richard as he walked off. He wanted to run after him to say, I'm sorry. But he knew Randy would think he was some kind of softy, so he didn't. Somehow, joining wasn't all that fun. It made Johnny feel sick. Randy, I shouldn't have called Richard an apple egghead. I hurt his feelings. That wasn't right, he said. Johnny, grow up. Richard is a marshmallow. You know, the picking on kind. The kind that will cry if you look at him hard. The softer that says, pick on me, pick on me. So we did. Johnny knew that Randy could make anything sound right. But deep down in his stomach, he still didn't feel good. And he knew he had to apologize to Richard before the day was over. Some things Johnny knew were just right, and saying I'm sorry was one of them. Johnny, here comes Norman. Watch me get him real good.
What do you think about Randy? He seems to get a kick out of teasing people and making them cry. Well, not all scars are on the outside, like this one. When you tease people, it makes a scar on the inside. Think about it while we go back to our story.
As Norman came past the gate, Johnny lowered his head. He didn't want to play Randy's game anymore. He simply did not like hurting people, and he wasn't going to laugh either. Randy leaned back and looked straight into Norman's eyes. Norman was a little shorter than him, so he had to look down a bit. Hey, dude, what's wrong with your mouth? Joked Randy. Norman didn't answer. Did you hear me? Asked Randy. I mean, if I didn't know better, I think your name was Buckteeth. Ha ha. Randy waited for Johnny to laugh. Instead, there was silence, a lot of it. Norman didn't laugh either. He didn't look sad or embarrassed. He didn't cry. He only stood still and looked Randy in the eyes. His parents had taught him about people like Randy, people who said mean things because of the pain they felt inside. Norman knew that his teeth were not straight, but like his dad said, son, you're more than your teeth. Besides, he knew that his family was saving money for his braces, and Randy would probably find another name. Because like his daddy would say, when people call you names, it's not about you, it's about them. Randy began to back up. He was scared. Johnny was scared too. What was Norman going to do? Bam! Randy was on the ground. His leg had given out as he tried to ease his way from Norman. Johnny looked at Norman. Norman looked at Randy, and Randy looked terrified. He was shaking. Water poured from his face. His secret was out. In his mind, he begged, please, don't call me Crip. Norman had seen him limp. He had seen his scar around his ankle. He had seen his wound. Randy felt sick. Norman walked over to Randy and drew back his hand. Johnny knew it was all over now. Norman was going to get Randy good. He could feel a crack coming, and on top of that, Norman was going to hit Randy. Johnny closed his eyes. All he could think about was, what goes around comes around. Whoosh! Oh no, Johnny thought, it's over now. He said as he peeked from one eye, but wait, Randy was no longer on the ground. Norman had reached down to pull him up. There was no name calling, no laughing, no cracks. Johnny couldn't believe his eyes. Norman had every chance to hurt Randy, but he didn't. Instead, he shook his head. Why pour salt on a wound? Norman said as he walked away. And from that day, Randy never called anyone else out of his name. Bam! Billy's book had dropped on the floor. As he wiped his eyes, he saw his parents standing over him. He must have fallen asleep while reading. Boy, that must have been some story, said his father. We've been standing here for some time. Your father wants to tell you something, his mother said as she smiled. Billy, I only said what I said to help you deal with those hurtful words the same way I do. When people call you out of your name, they're not talking to you or about you. Son, that is not you. You are our son, our future, and very, very special. And no matter what they say, they can never steal who you are. Don't let them steal your heart. Do you understand, son? I think I do, Dad. Billy reached for his parents' hands and held them in his. He looked up and smiled. When people call you out of your name, that's not who you are, and that's not who I am. I know who I am. Like you say, Dad, I'm special. I get good grades in school, I can hit home runs, and I can play the piano. And no matter what they say, I like who I am. Billy's mom could not believe what she was hearing. Her son did understand. Piece by piece, he was beginning to learn about life, the bitter and the sweet. The end. Ah, yes. Now, what a terrific story, right?
Yes.
Haley, can you tell us something that you like about yourself?
I'm very strong. I can run fast. I make my family laugh when I tell jokes. I help little kids on the playground, and I get A's in math.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I happen to know that your parents think that you are very special.
That's right, Haley, and so do we.
And remember, children, no matter what they say,
I like who I am.
very good, very good. I've really enjoyed reading to you today, but it's getting late. You should be on your way home now.
Come on, kids, let's go. Bye, storyteller.
Teller.
Goodbye, children. Goodbye, Bunky.